It all started on October 19 of 1991, when the Philadelphia police discovered the body of 77-year-old Louise Talley on the second floor of her home in the Nicetown neighborhood of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And according to reports, Talley had been assaulted, stabbed to death, and her home was looted. During the investigation, police said that someone approached them on the street outside the house and reported that a 20-year-old named Anthony Wright was involved in the crime, and that he was staying at a home on nearby with someone named St. James. Police went to the home, which was located about 300 feet from Talley's residence, and found Roland St. James and his roommate, John Richardson. And according to investigators, James admitted to police that he and Richardson rented rooms in the residence to people who used drugs. He was taken in handcuffs to a police station. He was advised he was the primary suspect in the murder because police found a television belonging to Talley in the house. And according to reports, James signed a statement saying that Wright told him he had stabbed a woman and that Wright brought in the television so that James could sell it for him. And according to investigators, the other suspect, John Richardson, signed a statement saying that Wright asked him to be a lookout when he went to Talley's house. But Richardson refused because he knew the woman and he did not break into houses. So on October 20, 1991, police went to Wright's home and he voluntarily went with them to the police station. Detectives Martin Devlin, Manuel Santiago, and Frank Jastrzemski said that within 2 hours, Wright signed a 9-page typed statement admitting that he assaulted and killed Louise Talley after going to her house to rob her of money and valuables so he could buy drugs. The statement said that Wright was wearing a Chicago Bulls sweatshirt, jeans, and Fila shoes, and that those items were still in his bedroom. Wright was then arrested and charged for the murder of Louise Talley. And according to reports, the detectives obtained a search warrant and returned to Wright's home, where they later said they discovered the blood-stained clothing that was described in the statement in Wright's room. In May 1993, Wright went to trial at the Philadelphia County Court of Common Pleas. During the trial, the original suspects, St. James and John Richardson, testified and implicated Wright in the murder. Also, 2 teenagers testified and stated that they were on the street with a third friend when they saw Wright go into Talley's home. Johnson did not testify, but police said he gave a statement that was concurring with the 2 teenagers' story. The detectives testified that they found the bloody clothing in Wright's room. A crime laboratory analyst testified that he found blood on the sweatshirt and jeans that was the same blood type as Talley's. The analyst also said semen was identified on the jeans and it could have come from Wright. However, Wright's mother, Myrtle Martin, testified that when the detectives left her home after searching Wright's room, they only took a white jumpsuit which Wright wore to work and did not take a Chicago Bulls sweatshirt, jeans, or shoes. Martin said her son did not own such clothing items. Later on, Wright testified and denied ever being in Talley's house, let alone raping or killing her. He said he did not know James, Richardson, or any of the 3 teenagers and had not seen any of them before. Nevertheless, Wright told the jury that on the night of October 18, 1991, he worked all day and returned about 5 p.m., then went to a club around 11 p.m. and returned home at 4 a.m. on October 19. He said he slept until 10 a.m. and went shopping with some friends and then attended a concert. He denied the clothing was his and said the shoes were size 11 and he wore size 9.5 and that he wore jeans with a 38-inch waist, 2 sizes larger than the jeans police said they recovered from his room. Wright said the confession was false and that he signed the statement only after detectives threatened to physically assault him if he continued to refuse to do so. But despite his testimony, on June 8, 1993, the jury convicted Wright of capital murder, theft, burglary, robbery, and weapons violations. The jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict on imposing the death penalty, voting 7-5 in favor of death. With no unanimous verdict, Wright was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But 12 years later in 2005, Wright sought DNA testing of the evidence, but in 2006, a judge denied the motion, citing Wright's confession. Wright then appealed and the Pennsylvania Superior Court upheld the ruling. But in 2011, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court set aside the decision and remanded the case back to the trial court, ruling that a confession is not a bar to DNA testing. And according to reports, 2 years later in 2013, DNA tests performed on the clothing revealed Talley's DNA inside the sweatshirt and jeans, an indication that the clothing had been worn by Talley and was in fact her clothing, not Wright's. The test findings suggested that the detectives had falsely claimed the clothing was found in Wright's room. Also, DNA testing of the kid revealed the DNA profile of a man named Ronnie Bird, an alleged Philadelphia crack dealer who in 1991 lived in the same neighborhood as Talley. And according to reports, Ronnie Bird died in a South Carolina prison in 2013 at age 62. Another 2 years after the DNA testing. In March of 2014, the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office agreed to vacate Wright's conviction. However, the prosecution claimed for the first time that Wright committed the crime with Bird. Nevertheless, Wright went to trial a second time in August of 2016. James and Richardson were dead, so their testimony from Wright's 1993 trial was read to the jury. The two teenagers who testified at Wright's original trial that they were standing on the street with a friend and saw Wright go into Talley's house testified and said their testimony in 1993 was false and been coerced by police. The prosecution attempted to impeach the two teens with their testimony from 1993 and also presented Wright's confession. The detectives insisted they found the bloody clothing in Wright's bedroom and maintained that Wright voluntarily confessed. But Wright, being represented by Innocence Project lawyers, again testified on his own behalf and denied any involvement in the crime. Wright testified that after 3 or 4 hours of accusations that he repeatedly denied. He said that he was handcuffed to a chair, with one detective holding his neck while the other put his face so close that their noses touched. He also said that one of the detectives said he would poke his eye out and sexually assault him if he didn't confess to the crime. The jury also was presented with the DNA test results linking Bird to the crime, as well as evidence that Bird was nearly twice as old as Wright at the time of the crime, that he was a crack cocaine addict friendly with James and Richardson, and that he and Wright did not know each other. Nevertheless, on August 23rd of 2016, the jury acquitted Wright and he was released. The very next month, in September of 2016, Wright filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Police Department. And less than 2 years later, in June of 2018, the lawsuit was settled for $9.85 million. 2 months later, in August of 2018, the Innocence Project lawyers filed a complaint against the prosecutor in the retrial, Bridget Kern, accusing her of knowingly allowing retired homicide detectives Santiago and Jastrzemski to testify falsely. The complaint, filed with the disciplinary board of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, said that during the retrial, the detectives said they knew very little about the post-conviction DNA testing and results, but that subsequently, they said in sworn depositions in the civil lawsuit that Kern had briefed them extensively about the DNA evidence prior to the retrial. The complaint filed stated the following: "It is difficult to conceive of a more textbook violation than when an attorney for the Commonwealth fails to correct a pivotal law enforcement witness's false denial of knowledge about facts that she herself provided to the witness in their pretrial preparation session." The complaint also said that Ms. Kern stood mute while not one, but two, of the Commonwealth's most critical witnesses perjured themselves in this fashion. And she did so as an experienced homicide prosecutor, serving as lead counsel for the Commonwealth in a case where the defendant faced mandatory life in prison without the possibility of parole if convicted. Now, for those that don't know, Kern was among the 31 employees of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office who were terminated in January of 2018 after Larry Krasner was elected district attorney. In August of 2021, Santiago, Devlin and Jastrzemski were charged with perjury and other crimes for their conduct in the investigation and prosecution of Wright. Philadelphia County District Attorney Larry Krasner said Santiago and Devlin had coerced what was a clearly false confession from Wright. He said Santiago and Devlin used unlawful tactics in order to coerce Wright into signing the confession. Krasner said they prevented him from reading what he had signed, and had made false promises that he could go home if he signed the document, and made violent threats toward him. Krasner said Jastrzębski lied under oath about finding the bloody clothing that linked Wright to the crime while searching his room. Krasner also said the clothes were actually found at the victim's house. As a result of the investigation, all three detectives stood trial. And on March 27, 2025, a jury handed out a mixed verdict for the three former Philadelphia police detectives. Starting with Marty Devlin, who was acquitted on all charges. However, his former colleague Frank Jastrzębski was acquitted of all but one charge, and his former partner, Manuel Santiago, was acquitted of all but two of his charges. Sentencing for Santiago and Jastrzębski has not been set as of yet. And Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner did not reveal what sentencing his office would seek, but said perjury normally carries about 9 months in prison, while a misdemeanor charge of false swearing can be up to 3 months. Now, as always, we would like to know what you think about this video down below in the comment section. Also, don't forget to like the video, share the video, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Peace.